It's funny. You reach a certain level in English and you think, okay, more words, faster talking, that's the key to sounding really advanced.
Right.
But what if I told you there's a whole other layer to it? Some like unexpected twists and turns that our source material today really digs into.
That's exactly right. It's not just about adding to your toolbox of grammar and vocabulary, is it?
No.
This text, it explores the often overlooked mental and emotional shifts, the things that happen as you progress.
The subtle stuff.
Yeah, the subtle nuances that separate simply being understood from, well, truly connecting with the language.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Our mission, sort of, is to unpack these insights, to give you a clearer understanding and hopefully a boost of confidence on your advanced English journey.
Sounds good.
We've got 9 key areas from our source to explore.
Yeah.
There's the myth of fluent like a native,
Yes, that one.
the fascinating world of advanced vocabulary, the real deal with listening comprehension, the knack for speaking naturally, that inner voice thinking in English, the persistent fear of mistakes,
Always there.
the plateau problem, learning beyond the books, and finally, this idea of English becoming a kind of second you.
Wow, quite a list.
Sounds like a journey.
It does. And what's particularly insightful, I think, is how the source shows that language learning at this stage, it becomes less about rote memorization.
Right.
And much more about integrating English into your life and, well, your sense of self, really.
Okay, so let's kick off with that fluent like a native idea. Everyone dreams of it, right? When you're starting out, that perfect, effortless speaker is often the benchmark. But what happens when you realize, even after years of work, that ideal still feels miles away?
Well, the text offers a really liberating perspective here, actually. It points out that even those who grew up speaking English, they aren't flawless.
That's so true.
Think about it. Native speakers use filler, where it's like,
All the time.
they sometimes misspeak grammatically, or they, search for the right word. So aiming for an unattainable perfection can be incredibly demotivating.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Our source shifts the focus from this idea of perfect mimicry to something much more valuable, connection and clear communication.
Yes.
It's about whether you're understood, whether you can convey what you mean and feel, and whether you can truly engage with the person you're talking to. That warmth and naturalness, even with a few little stumbles, that can be far more impactful.
Exactly. The source even poses this thought-provoking scenario. Would you rather listen to someone who speaks technically perfect English but sounds a bit robotic?
Right.
Or someone whose English has a few minor errors, maybe, but who communicates with genuine warmth and enthusiasm?
Good question.
It highlights that language, at its heart, is about human interaction. Sometimes striving for absolute perfection can actually, create a barrier.
Yeah, you can feel a bit stiff. So the big takeaway isn't about beating yourself up over every little mistake. They're going to happen. It's about not letting that fear hold you back from speaking and connecting. Every time you put yourself out there, you're learning and growing, and, well, that's a win, right?
Absolutely. Now let's dive into the world of advanced vocabulary.
Okay.
You start off thrilled with every new word you learn, but then you hit this stage.
Yeah.
It feels like there's an infinite ocean of idioms, phrasal verbs, slang, specialized terms.
Right, yeah.
It can feel like you'll never know enough.
It's like you've mastered the alphabet, and now you're staring at the entire library of Alexandria. That feeling of being constantly behind can be really tough.
It can, but our source offers a smart way to look at this.
Which is?
Focusing on the right bricks, the vocabulary that actually matters for your life, your job, your hobbies, the things you're passionate about.
Relevance.
Exactly. This is such a more effective strategy, instead of trying to absorb endless lists of random words.
Which never stick anyway.
Right. The emphasis shifts to actively encountering and learning vocabulary in context. Through movies you enjoy, conversations about your interests, books related to your field.
Living the language.
Yes. It's about building a vocabulary that's personally relevant and usable.
It's like building a house, and instead of just collecting any old brick, you're carefully selecting the ones that fit your specific design. Makes sense.
And the source reminds us this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. It's about a consistent, ongoing engagement with the language.
Patience is key then.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to listening.
The puzzle.
Yeah. You go from understanding clear, slow audio in learning materials
Mm-hmm.
to being confronted with real-world English. People talking quickly, sometimes slurring words together,
Mumbling.
using slang or idiomatic expressions you've never heard, even leaving sentences unfinished.
Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating to know the individual words but still struggle to understand the whole thing.
It really can. It's like you can identify all the instruments in an orchestra, but the actual symphony sounds like a chaotic mess.
A good analogy.
But the text reframes this as a really valuable challenge, something that actually trains your brain to process language in a more nuanced way.
How so?
Well, think of it like putting together a complex jigsaw puzzle. At first, all the pieces look the same and confusing,
Mm-hmm.
but as you persist, you start to see patterns and how the pieces fit together. With real-world listening, you learn to pick up on intonation, context, the overall feeling
Marry the vibe.
to understand the message, even if you miss a few individual words.
So don't panic if you miss a word. Focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly. And the key, according to our source, is to really immerse yourself in diverse, authentic English.
Like what?
YouTube videos, podcasts on topics you love, music, movies, even just, eavesdropping a little.
Ethically.
Ethically, of course, on conversations around you. It's about training your ear to the natural rhythms and sounds.
And repetition helps too, right? Listening again.
Oh, massively. Listening to the same material multiple times can really help you catch those subtle details you missed the first time.
Got it. Okay, what about speaking naturally?
Ah, yes. It's easy to think that sounding advanced means using complicated grammar and sophisticated vocabulary in every sentence.
Trying too hard, maybe?
Perhaps. But the source unveils this invisible world of communication.
Ooh, mysterious.
Things like rhythm, tone, speed, where you pause, the little filler words you use, and the overall flow of your speech.
The music of the language.
Precisely. This is where the real artistry comes in. It's not just the words themselves, but the music behind them. Native speakers connect words, their intonation rises and falls, they use like, and,
Those little things.
it all contributes to that natural conversational feel. And trying to be too grammatically perfect can sometimes sound a little stilted or even, well, insincere.
Yeah, you can sound like you're reading from a script.
Exactly. The text highlights that overly formal speech can create a sense of distance. Natural speaking is about sounding human, relatable, effortless. And that often involves embracing a less rigid structure and incorporating those little linguistic quirks that make speech sound alive. The emphasis shifts from perfect accuracy in every single word to the overall musicality of your spoken English.
So how do you practice that?
Well, our source suggests a fantastic technique called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah, basically mimicking the way native speakers talk, paying attention to their tone, their speed, their rhythm, copying them.
Like karaoke for speaking.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And crucially, it emphasizes the link between thinking in English and speaking more naturally.
Ah, the internal stuff. Which brings us to that silent battle of thinking in English.
Exactly. Many advanced learners still find themselves translating in their heads before they speak.
Guilty.
And the text explains how this can become a major bottleneck. It slows you down, makes speaking feel like a mental marathon.
It's exhausting. Like having a middleman in every conversation, taking extra time and energy.
Totally. The source underscores that thinking directly in English is a skill. It needs to be actively developed through consistent daily practice.
It's habit to build.
It is, and it's not necessarily about knowing even more grammar rules or vocabulary lists,
Okay.
but consciously making an effort to process your thoughts directly in English. Start simple.
Like what?
Simple everyday thoughts. Practice that internal monologue in English. Okay, I need to get milk. What should I make for dinner? Just in English.
Narrate your life internally.
Pretty much. The text points out the sense of freedom and increased fluency that comes when you can bypass that translation step. It feels lighter.
I can imagine. And it's important to remember, as the source reminds us, that thinking in English doesn't mean you have to construct complex academic sentences in your head.
Right at all. Even native speakers' inner thoughts are often quite simple, fragmented even. It's about making English your default mental language and being okay with it being a little rough around the edges at first. Just practice.
Except the messy internal monologue.
Exactly. Now, the text then addresses something many advanced learners find surprising: the persistence of the fear of making mistakes.
You'd think it would go away by now.
You might hope, but the source reveals that it often just becomes quieter, a more subtle presence.
It's like that little nagging voice that still pipes up every now and then.
Was it that right? Did they understand?
Yes. But the source offers a really helpful reframe here.
Okay.
It suggests that this lingering fear isn't necessarily a sign of weakness. It's more an indication that you care
Care about what?
about expressing yourself well, about connecting effectively with others. It shows you respect the language and the listener.
Never thought of it that way. So it's not just insecurity.
Not entirely. That's a very insightful way to look at it, I think. It suggests this concern can actually be a motivator.
Okay.
The crucial thing is to recognize that true confidence isn't about never feeling fear. Right.
But about being willing to act and speak even when you do feel a little apprehensive, courage, not fearlessness.
Acting despite the fear.
Mm.
And the source reminds us that, again, even native speakers stumble and make errors. It's normal.
Absolutely. It's a natural part of communication. And sometimes allowing yourself to be imperfect can actually make you more relatable.
It lowers the pressure for everyone.
Exactly. It can create a more comfortable environment for connection. It's about taking those small leaps of faith in speaking situations. That's what gradually builds real confidence.
Small acts of courage. I like that.
Next up, the text delves into the often frustrating reality of learning plateaus.
Ugh, the worst.
Yeah, you're putting in the effort, but it feels like you're just not making any progress. Stuck.
So discouraging. Makes you want to quit sometimes.
It really does, but the source emphasizes that these plateaus are normal, and often they're a necessary part of the learning process.
How can not progressing be necessary?
Well, the source uses a wonderful analogy of a tree. Even when you don't see much growth above the surface, the roots are still developing and strengthening underground. Consolidation is happening.
So stuff is still going on, just invisibly.
Pretty much. This highlights the importance of perseverance and patience. The text points out that pushing through these plateaus, just sticking with it, is a testament to your dedication.
Surviving the plateau is the win.
In a way, yes. The key is to maintain consistent contact with English, even if it's just for short periods each day. Keep that connection alive.
Don't disconnect completely.
Right. And it's not just about grinding harder either. The source suggests re-injecting some joy into your learning.
Oh.
Focusing on aspects of English you truly enjoy. Watching that series you love, listening to music, talking about your hobbies, and paying attention to how you feel about your English.
Not just the grammar tests?
Exactly. Not just focusing on measurable improvements. Sometimes the biggest leaps happen quietly behind the scenes, and then suddenly you realize you've improved without really trying.
The magic breakthrough.
Kind of. Okay. The source then shifts to the vital role of learning outside of traditional textbooks.
Getting out of the classroom.
Yeah. While textbooks provide a valuable foundation, we know the English used in real-world communication often differs significantly.
It's like learning about swimming from a manual versus actually jumping in the water.
Great analogy. Real English is dynamic, messy, full of surprises, and driven by emotion.
Not neat and tidy like in the book.
Definitely not. The text emphasizes that life itself becomes the ultimate teacher at the advanced level. The focus shifts from studying for exams to actively living the language, using it in everyday situations, using it to express a full range of emotions, laughing, arguing, dreaming in English.
Wow, dreaming in English, that's a milestone.
It is. So this means consciously choosing to watch movies in English, listening to podcasts about your hobbies, engaging in conversations with English speakers about things that matter to you.
Trading grammar drills for real life.
Essentially, yes. And the source reframes mistakes made in these real-world interactions not as failures,
But as
invaluable learning opportunities. Every oops moment is feedback.
Okay, that's a good mindset shift.
Finally, the source explores the fascinating phenomenon of English becoming a kind of second personality.
A second personality. Sounds a bit dramatic.
Maybe a little, but it makes sense. This isn't about being fake, but rather a natural evolution of your identity as you become more fluent.
How does that work?
You might find yourself expressing emotions slightly differently, or maybe your sense of humor in English feels distinct from your native language. You access different parts of yourself.
Huh. Like unlocking a different facet of yourself through the language.
Exactly. The text suggests that actively living in English fosters the growth of this second self. It gives you new ways to think and feel.
It might feel a bit strange at first, though. Like you're not being you.
It might. But the text reassures learners that this is a sign of growth. It means you're building a richer understanding of both languages and cultures. It uses a beautiful metaphor. of having two gardens within yourself. Both belong to you. Both are beautiful, but they grow slightly different things.
Two gardens, I like that. It's an expansion, not a replacement.
Precisely. It celebrates the bravery of building this second home within yourself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that reaching an advanced level in English is, wow, it's so much more than just grammar rules and vocabulary lists.
It really is. It involves significant shifts in mindset, accepting imperfection as part of the process,
Definitely.
and actively immersing yourself in real-life English, living it.
The core message, I think, is that every effort you make to speak, to listen, to truly engage with English, that's a step forward. That's a victory in itself.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the ongoing journey of communication and personal growth, rather than chasing some unattainable ideal of perfection.
Yeah, enjoying the process, maybe.
That's a huge part of it.
Absolutely. We encourage you to embrace this adventure with all its ups and downs and to celebrate every step you take. You're already doing great just by engaging.
Well said. And on that note, maybe something to think about. How might understanding these less obvious aspects of advanced English learning change the way you approach your studies and your interactions? Which of these insights resonated most deeply with you, and maybe what small step could you take today or tomorrow to put one of them into practice? You know, it's a pretty common thought, isn't it? You get to an advanced level in English and you think, okay, now it's just about knowing tons more words and like speaking really fast.
Right. That's the picture many people have.
But what if I told you there's kind of this whole other side to it, this hidden landscape of advanced English learning with some, well, surprising realities that maybe don't get talked about so much?
Exactly. And that's really the heart of what we're digging into today. We've got some fascinating material here that really explores those less obvious parts of moving past that intermediate stage.
Yeah.
It's less about just piling on more vocab.
Yeah.
It's more fundamental.
Yeah.
About shifting how you actually understand and use the language.
Totally. So our mission, I guess, in this deep dive is to try and unpack these insights for you, the listener. We want to go beyond just explaining and really help you connect with what it genuinely means to feel, confident and comfortable using English at a high level.
And the source material we're looking at, it identifies 9 key areas, 9 kind of shifts in perspective that seem to be really crucial on this journey. These are the places where your understanding, your whole approach to English naturally starts to change.
Okay, so these 9 areas, the sort of hidden truths we're going to uncover are, first, this idea that perfect native-like fluency is maybe a bit of a myth.
Right.
Then the complexities of growing your vocabulary when you're already advanced gets overwhelming.
Definitely.
The challenges of understanding real-world spoken English, when it's fast and messy.
Oh, yeah.
The nuances of actually speaking naturally, not just correctly.
That's a big one.
Then there's that internal thing, the silent battle of trying to think in English. The way that fear of making mistakes just sticks around.
It really does.
The reality of hitting those learning plateaus where you feel stuck.
Every learner knows those.
The importance of learning outside of textbooks, in the real world. And finally, this fascinating idea that English can become almost like a second personality, a second you. Okay, wow, that's a lot. Let's start with that first one. This dream of sounding perfectly native.
Yeah, that initial goal. Speaking exactly like a native speaker. It's such a powerful motivator for so many learners, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
They imagine themselves just effortlessly using perfect grammar, perfect vocabulary, sounding just like someone who grew up speaking English.
Yeah.
It often kicks off the whole learning process.
It really does. You picture yourself sounding like you're straight out of a movie or something. And that ambition, it's brilliant for getting you started, no doubt. But then as you keep going, you start to realize, hang on, those little errors, they still pop up sometimes. You still have moments where you're grasping for a word. And that perfect native speaker image starts to feel, well, maybe a bit unrealistic, a bit out of reach.
And what's really interesting, the source material points this out quite clearly, is that even native speakers don't always speak perfectly. Not by a long shot. They make grammatical slips, they forget words, they use fillers like and all the time.
All the time.
Their sentences aren't always textbook perfect. Natural speech is often quite relaxed, sometimes technically wrong, but the key thing is they keep talking, they communicate.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. They don't let those little imperfections stop them, do they?
Not at all.
The focus shifts, doesn't it? Away from this impossible target of flawlessness towards something much more well, human, making a connection, getting your message across. It
Right.
becomes about, can you share your thoughts? Can you tell your story? Can you express how you feel without getting totally hung up on every single word being absolutely perfect?
That's it, precisely. True fluency, according to this text anyway, isn't really about dodging every single mistake. It's about your listener feeling comfortable, understanding you.
Yeah.
It's about being authentic,
Mm-hmm.
confident in how you express yourself. I mean, think about it. Would you rather listen to someone with absolutely perfect grammar who sounds kind of stiff and distant? Or someone who maybe makes a few tiny errors but is warm and open and actually connecting with you?
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Really. And the source points out something important here sometimes. Chasing that flawless English can actually make learners afraid to speak.
Yes.
They get worried about being judged if they don't get it 100% right.
And that fear is totally understandable.
Oh.
But the text suggests maybe reframing it. People generally respond well to effort, to honesty, to someone just trying to connect.
Right.
Most listeners aren't sitting there with a red pen grading your grammar. Friendliness, clarity, just making a genuine effort to communicate. That's what really lands.
So the big takeaway here is maybe let go of that pressure a bit to be perfect.
I think so.
Except that making mistakes is just part of it, part of learning, part of growing. And the real win is being able to communicate effectively, confidently. Every time you open your mouth and speak English, you are moving forward.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears to vocabulary.
Ah, vocab. Yeah.
In the beginning, learning new words is pretty exciting, right? Each one feels like a big step, like adding a key piece to the puzzle. You learn basic stuff and you see clear progress.
Oh, those early days are great. Learning words for, table, chair, run, eat. It feels like you're building something solid.
Definitely.
You might even think, okay, eventually I'll just know all the words I need. But then something kind of surprising happens as you get more advanced. Instead of feeling like you're getting closer to the end, the sheer vastness of English vocabulary can suddenly feel really overwhelming.
Yeah, the source we're using actually calls this the vocabulary explosion.
Huh, okay.
Because suddenly you're not just dealing with basic words. You're hit with idioms, phrasal verbs, slang, specialized terms for work or hobbies.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention all the subtle words for different emotions or types of humor or levels of formality. You can feel like English isn't just one language, but like a whole collection of languages all mashed together. And that can be pretty intimidating.
It's like you're suddenly standing at the bottom of this absolutely massive mountain made of words, and you're just thinking, will I ever get to the top?
Yeah.
That fear of constantly running into words you don't know, it can really creep in. It might even make some people feel like, what's the point? The goal seems impossibly far away.
But here's the crucial insight, I think.
Yeah.
You don't actually need to learn every single word.
Really?
No way. Even native speakers don't know every word. They have gaps, too. The key is to focus on what the source calls the right bricks.
The right bricks. Okay.
Yeah, the vocabulary that's actually relevant to your life, your work, your hobbies, your interests, what you talk about, what you dream about. Those are the words that will build your practical fluency.
That makes sense. Like building a house, you only need the specific materials for your design, not every brick in the world.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that this growth, this vocabulary building, shouldn't feel like some forced march, like memorizing endless lists.
The lists. Yeah.
It happens more gradually, naturally, through actually encountering English in real situations, in movies and conversations, reading books you enjoy.
So learning them in context.
Precisely. When you meet a new word in a meaningful context, you're way more likely to remember it because it's tied to an experience, an emotion, an idea. It's like a slow, steady collection process. You just naturally pick things up as you go along.
Okay. So if you're feeling swamped, totally overwhelmed by all the English words out there, just remember, you don't need to know them all.
Not at all.
Focus on the words that matter to you. Keep engaging with real English, stuff you actually find interesting, and trust that your vocabulary will just grow naturally, like branches on a tree.
Exactly. Now, speaking of real English, let's talk about listening.
Ah, listening. Okay. This is a big one for a lot of people.
It really is. When you first start learning, the listening stuff they give you is often super clear, right? Spoken slowly, carefully pronounced.
Yeah, nice and neat.
You can usually pick out the individual words. Understanding feels, well, achievable, relatively speaking.
And you think, okay, I'm getting the hang of this. Soon I'll understand everything.
Huh. Yeah. But then Then you step out into the real world.
Hmm.
You watch a movie where people are talking fast, maybe over each other,
Hmm.
or you hear a casual chat between native speakers at normal speed, or a conversation just full of slang and jokes and things that aren't explicitly said.
And suddenly, bam, it feels like you've just hit a brick wall.
It really can. The text we're looking at, it describes real-world English really well, I think. It calls it like a fast-flowing river
Okay.
where words just seem to blur together. Sentences are often unfinished. There's this constant stream of informal stuff, jokes, expressions you've never encountered.
And the frustrating part is you might actually know a lot of the individual words they're using.
Exactly. You recognize the words in isolation, but your brain just can't seem to process them quickly enough in that stream of sound. And that leads to feeling really frustrated, maybe even inadequate.
Yeah, it's that disconnect. Your ears are hearing it, but your brain isn't quite making sense of it in time.
But the source, interestingly, tries to reframe this struggle. It suggests seeing it as a positive challenge, actually,
How so?
as a sign that your listening skills, your auditory processing, is actually being pushed. It's learning to adapt to this new, messier reality.
Okay, like leveling up your ears.
Kind of. Think of it like doing a really complex jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
At first, all the pieces look confusing, maybe similar. You can't see how they fit, but you keep looking, keep trying pieces.
And slowly, patterns emerge.
Exactly. You start to see connections, and gradually the picture comes together. Listening to real fast English is a bit like that initial confusion. It eventually gives way to understanding as your brain gets better at picking out sounds, guessing meaning from the context, filling in the missing pieces.
So the key is just keep listening, even when it's hard.
That's what the text really emphasizes. Don't get discouraged if you miss words or even whole sentences. Try listening for the overall feeling instead, the speaker's emotion, the main idea they're trying to get across.
Focus on the gist, not every detail.
Right. Your brain is actually pretty amazing at constructing meaning, even with incomplete information.
Mm.
And it's really crucial to go beyond just the formal lesson materials. You need to immerse yourself in all sorts of real English.
Like what?
Oh, YouTube videos on topics you like, podcasts like this one,
Yeah.
music, movies, TV shows, trying to chat with English speakers. Anything that exposes you to the natural rhythm, the sounds, the context of the language as it's actually used.
And repetition helps too, right? Listening again.
Definitely. Don't underestimate the power of listening to the same thing multiple times. You'll almost certainly pick up more each time.
Okay. So if you're in that frustrating phase where real spoken English just feels like noise, remember it's a normal hurdle.
Very normal.
It's not a sign you're failing. It's actually a step towards a deeper kind of understanding. So keep listening to different stuff, trust your brain will adapt, and eventually you'll move from just hearing sounds to really getting the message.
Well put. Okay, now let's think about the other side of the coin.
Right.
Speaking.
Right, speaking naturally.
Yeah. Many advanced learners, they still kind of believe that speaking well is all about perfect grammar and using lots of fancy vocabulary.
Well, yeah, we spend years focusing on that stuff, don't we? Grammar rules, vocab lists. You think that's the key?
Exactly. And you might have a really solid grasp of complex sentences, a good range of advanced words. But somehow when you actually speak, it still feels a little, I don't know.
Off. A bit stiff, maybe.
Yeah.
More too formal for just a casual chat.
Yeah, exactly that. And the source we're using, it introduces this idea of the invisible world of natural speaking.
Ooh, intriguing. The invisible world.
It's all the stuff that goes beyond just grammar and vocabulary. Things like rhythm, intonation, the music of the language, how you connect words together smoothly.
Pauses.
Where you pause, yeah. Even the filler words you'd use, like, or, just the overall flow. Native speakers, they naturally link words, right? They reduce, sounds like going to becomes gonna. Their tone goes up and down depending on meaning and emotion. They use fillers to sound natural and give themselves thinking time.
And the text points out, actually, that speaking with too perfect, overly correct English can sometimes sound a bit weird.
It can. A bit unnatural. It can almost create distance in a casual conversation, like you're reading from a script instead of just talking.
Right. So natural speaking isn't necessarily about being 100% grammatically correct all the time?
No. It's much more about sounding authentic, human, effortless even. It's about sort of feeling the natural music, the rhythm of the language, and moving with it, rather than rigidly sticking to every single rule you learned in a book.
So how do you practice that?
Well, the source suggests a really practical technique called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah. You basically listen to A native speaker could be from a podcast, a movie, anything, and you try to repeat what they say almost immediately after them.
Oh, okay.
But you're not just copying the words. You're trying to mimic their tone, their speed, their rhythm, the way their voice goes up and down.
Like trying to capture the music of it.
Exactly. It's almost like singing along to a song, but
Hmm.
with speech. You focus on the overall sound and feel.
That sounds challenging, but useful.
It can be. And importantly, something else really helps make your speaking sound more natural. And that's being able to think directly in English, which conveniently brings us to our next key area.
Ah, yes, the internal monologue, that silent battle that happens inside your head.
Totally. When you're first learning, it's completely natural to translate, isn't it? You think in your native language, you mentally translate it into English, and then you speak.
Standard procedure for beginners, yeah.
And while that's a necessary step early on, when you get to an advanced level, that constant translation process can actually start to hold you back.
How so?
Well, it slows you down, for one thing. It can make what you say sound less spontaneous, less natural, and honestly, it's just tiring. It takes a lot of mental energy.
Yeah, you feel that lag.
Right. You might know the English words, you might know the grammar, but constantly shuffling back and forth between languages in your head creates this bottleneck.
You're trying to have a smooth conversation, but your brain keeps wanting to take that detour through your first language first. You feel that gap, don't you? Between the thought popping into your head and the words actually coming out of your mouth.
Exactly that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And the text we're looking at really emphasizes that thinking in English. It isn't something that just magically happens once you know enough grammar or vocabulary.
Oh, right. It's not automatic.
Apparently not. It's more like a habit, a new pathway for your brain to process information. And building that habit, it takes consistent, daily practice. It takes a conscious effort to try and shift your internal language.
So you have to deliberately reroute your thoughts, make them go straight into English instead of via the translation filter.
That's the idea. And it often starts really small. Simple thoughts during the day, just internally narrating what you're doing or seeing or feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but doing it in English.
Like, okay, I'm walking to the kitchen now. I need some coffee. That kind of thing.
Precisely. Just those little bits of internal self-talk, practiced consistently.
Hmm.
And apparently, there's a real sense of freedom that comes when you start to actually do it, when you begin thinking more directly in English.
Freedom? How?
It's like a mental weight lifts. Your speech can become quicker, more fluid. You feel a more direct connection to the language you're speaking.
Okay, I can see that.
And it's important to remember, thinking in English doesn't mean your internal thoughts have to be super complex, perfect sentences. Even native speakers often think in pretty simple terms, fragments, P words.
Right. Our internal monologue isn't always Shakespeare.
Not at all. So the advice here seems to be, embrace your imperfect internal English. Don't worry if it's simple or a bit messy at first. Start small with those simple internal chats. Practice every day, and gradually that struggle with translation should lessen, making way for the more direct, efficient process of thinking in English.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, another struggle that doesn't always lessen as much as we hope.
Ah, the fear.
The fear of making mistakes. It's so persistent, isn't it? There's often this hope, this expectation maybe, that as you get more advanced, that fear will just poof, disappear.
You really hope it will. You imagine reaching this advanced level and suddenly feeling totally fearless, speaking with complete confidence, never again feeling that little knot of anxiety before you join a conversation or give a presentation.
Yeah, that inner critic will finally shut up.
If only.
Yeah.
But the reality, as the source highlights quite starkly, is that this fear, it rarely vanishes completely.
Ooh.
It tends to get quieter, maybe, less intense, less likely to actually stop you from speaking, but it often just lingers in the background, even after years of practice, even when you're objectively quite fluent.
Huh. It's that little voice, isn't it? Before you speak up in a meeting or when you meet new people. That tiny worry. What if I say something stupid? What if I make a mistake? Even if you've spoken English thousands of times.
Exactly. And it's easy to feel frustrated by that, thinking, come on, I should be past this by now.
Yeah.
But the source offers a really important shift in perspective here. It suggests that feeling this lingering fear isn't necessarily a sign of weakness.
What is it then?
It can actually be a sign that you care. You care about communicating well. You care about connecting with people effectively. It reflects your investment in the language and in the interaction.
Okay, so it's not a flaw. It's a sign of caring.
Potentially.
Okay.
And the key thing isn't waiting for the fear to magically evaporate because, well, it might not.
Right.
Instead, it's about learning to act despite the fear. Acknowledging it's there, but speaking anyway. True confidence, the source suggests, isn't really the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward even when you're feeling a bit shaky.
Like courage, almost.
Exactly like courage. Think about performers or
Okay.
public speakers. They often talk about feeling nervous, right? But they still go out there and do it.
Sure.
And sometimes allowing yourself to be imperfect, to make mistakes, can actually make the people you're talking to feel more comfortable too. It makes you more relatable, potentially leading to better connections.
That's an interesting point. Okay, so the advice is try to embrace those small acts of courage when you feel the fear, but speak anyway.
I think so. Recognize that even native speakers mess up. Mistakes are just a normal part of talking. That lingering fear doesn't mean you're not advanced. It just means you're human and you care.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk about something else almost every learner experiences. The dreaded plateau.
Ugh, yes. The learning plateau, that frustrating stage where you feel like you're putting the time, you're studying, you're practicing, but you're just not seeing the same obvious progress you saw earlier on.
It's that feeling of being stuck, isn't it? You're not necessarily getting worse at English, but you're definitely not feeling like you're improving much either. Days, weeks, maybe even months can go by and it just feels like you're treading water, stuck in neutral, not moving forward. And the source material really emphasizes how common this is and how long these plateaus can sometimes feel.
And the really crucial thing to get here is that these plateaus, they're actually a normal part of learning, even though they're often invisible from the outside.
Normal, but it feels so unproductive.
I know, but the source uses a great analogy. Think of a tree growing.
Okay.
In the beginning, you see lots of rapid growth above ground, new shoots, leaves. But then there are phases where the main action is happening underground. The roots are spreading, getting stronger, anchoring the tree, preparing it for the next big growth spurt above ground.
So the progress is happening just unseen beneath the surface.
That's the idea. Your English learning can be like that. You might be consolidating knowledge, making connections stronger, automating things in your brain, preparing for the next leap, even if it doesn't feel like it day to day.
But it's so easy to get discouraged when you're in that phase. You start doubting yourself, right?
Yeah.
Thinking maybe this is it, maybe I've hit my limit, or why bother putting in the effort if nothing's changing?
Oh, absolutely. The temptation to just ease off or even give up can be really strong during a plateau.
Yeah.
But the text really highlights that sticking with it, persevering through these phases, is actually a massive sign of your dedication. It's about keeping going, even when the rewards aren't immediate.
And then eventually, does the plateau end?
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
There's often this eventual breakthrough moment where you suddenly realize, wow, I have improved. Maybe you understand something complex easily or express yourself much more fluently without even trying. And that makes all the persistence feel worthwhile.
So what's the advice for getting through a plateau? Just keep grinding.
Sort of, but maybe smartly. The main advice is to maintain daily contact with English. Keep touching the language every day, even if it's just for a short time.
Like watching a quick video, reading an article.
Listening to a song, yeah.
Yep.
Just something to keep that connection alive. And importantly, try to find ways to bring some joy back into it. Focus on using English for things you genuinely enjoy, rather than just measuring progress all the time. Think about how you feel using the language, not just what you can measure.
Okay, so if you feel like you're stuck on a plateau right now, remember it's probably normal. You're likely still growing those roots underground.
Good way to put it.
Be patient, stay engaged, keep touching the language, and trust that progress is happening, even if you can't see it right now.
Exactly. Okay, moving on. Let's think about where the learning happens. When you first start out, textbooks are often king, right?
Oh yeah. Classrooms, grammar exercises, vocabulary lists. That structured approach feels safe and necessary at the beginning.
And textbooks absolutely provide a vital foundation.
Yeah,
They give you the rules, the basic vocabulary, that initial framework. Very useful.
definitely.
But as you move forward, you start to notice, don't you,
Yeah.
that the English people actually use in real life, in conversations, movies, songs, online, it often sounds quite different from the neat, tidy, correct English in the textbooks.
Oh, massively different. Yeah, that moment hits hard. You try to use a perfectly grammatical sentence you learned from the book in a real fast-paced chat, and it just doesn't quite fit. Real conversation is so much more fluid, faster, full of slang, unfinished sentences, things people just imply. It can feel like a completely different beast sometimes.
And the source material really drives this point home. At an advanced level, real life itself becomes your best teacher.
Life is the textbook.
In a way, yes. Textbooks give you the tools, maybe the map. But the actual learning, the deep understanding, happens when you step outside the classroom, outside the structured exercises, and just engage with English in its natural environment. It's a big shift from learning about English for a test to actually living the language.
So it's about using English to have real experiences, real emotions.
Exactly. Laughing at a real joke someone tells in English. Understanding the frustration or excitement in someone's voice. Even feeling that pang of frustration yourself when you can't quite find the right words to express something important. That's where the really deep, meaningful learning happens.
Okay. So the advice then is maybe shift the balance. Spend less time purely on textbook exercises and more time actively diving into real English stuff that you actually find fun or interesting.
That seems to be the core message. Watch those movies, listen to those podcasts, read those books or articles that genuinely capture your interest. Use the language for its real purpose, communication and connection.
And try not to see mistakes made in those real situations as failures.
Right. See them as feedback, as learning opportunities. Each interaction, even the awkward ones, teaches you something valuable about how the language really works.
Okay, so step out of the textbook comfort zone. Embrace the messy, unpredictable, sometimes confusing world of real English.
Get your hands dirty with it.
Immerse yourself in authentic stuff, authentic experiences. That's where your English will really come alive and grow in ways you maybe didn't even expect.
Well said. Okay, final point. And this one is quite intriguing.
Yeah.
The source explores this fascinating idea that for many advanced learners, English starts to feel almost like a second personality.
A second personality? What do you mean? Like being two different people?
Not quite like a split personality, but more like finding that you express yourself, maybe even see the world slightly differently when you're operating in English compared to your native language.
Huh. Okay, so it's that moment when you realize you're not just translating your usual thoughts and feelings. You're actually thinking and feeling in a slightly new way within the English language.
Exactly. And it can feel a little strange at first, like you're meeting a slightly different version of yourself.
Yeah, I can imagine that might feel weird. Like, am I being fake?
Right. But the text explains it's not about being fake or inauthentic at all. It's more like a natural expansion of your identity through the language itself.
It's an expansion.
Yeah. English might offer you different ways to phrase things, maybe different nuances of emotion. It might even make it easier to talk about certain topics that feel awkward or loaded in your first language for whatever reason.
So English can open up new ways of thinking or feeling.
That's the idea. It's like it creates a new space inside you, a different way to interact with the world and with yourself. You might find you're a bit more direct in English, perhaps, or maybe more humorous or more analytical. And it feels surprisingly natural within that specific linguistic context.
Wow. Okay.
And this growth, this emergence of a second self in English, it's deeply tied to actually living in the language, not just studying its grammar.
Right, it comes from using it for real life.
Experiencing the whole range of human emotions through English, building relationships, navigating different social situations. All of that contributes to this broadening of who you are. It's like building a second home for your thoughts and feelings inside yourself.
That's a lovely way to put it, a second home.
And while some learners, understandably, might feel a bit shy or self-conscious about this shift feeling different in English,
Yeah.
the source reassures us that it's actually a really positive sign, a sign of deep learning, growth, and enrichment. It's not about losing who you are in your first language. It's about adding another layer, another dimension to your identity.
Like having two gardens instead of one. Both are yours. Both make your life richer.
Exactly like that. Both gardens belong to you. Both are part of your landscape. It's something to celebrate, really the courage it takes to build that second home within yourself.
Okay. That's a really fascinating perspective. So, wow, if we try and bring all this together,
Yeah, let's sum up.
reaching an advanced level in English, it's clearly about way more than just ticking off grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary lists, isn't it?
Much more. It involves these really fundamental shifts in mindset and how you approach the language. It's about embracing imperfection, accepting the challenges.
And really engaging with English actively out there in the real world in authentic situations.
Absolutely. And remember, every single time you make that effort to speak, to listen, to connect in English, you are already winning. You're already moving forward on that journey.
Yeah. It's definitely an ongoing journey, isn't it? With those inevitable bumps in the road, those plateaus, those fears, but also with these really unique and I think deeply rewarding aspects, like discovering that second self.
Totally. Okay. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Consider this. How might really taking these hidden truths on board, the myth of perfection, the nature of vocabulary, real listening, natural speaking, thinking in English, the fear, the plateaus, learning from life, the second personality, how might understanding these things actually change your relationship with English?
Hmm.
How might it shift the confidence you feel when you use it? Which of these insights we talked about today resonated the most with you personally? And maybe, just maybe, what's one small way you could see yourself applying that insight as you move forward on your own English journey?
Definitely something to chew on.
You know, that feeling. You've put in the hours, you've got the grammar basics down, you've built up some vocabulary, you can actually, have conversations.
Hmm.
But getting to that next level of English fluency, it still feels a bit slippery, maybe,
Yeah.
like trying to catch smoke.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are these unspoken challenges, right? These silent struggles that, well, your average language class just doesn't really get into.
Exactly, and that's what we're digging into today. We're looking at some really interesting insights from our source material. It's not the usual advice.
Right, this text, it really unpacks what it calls the hidden truths, silent struggles, and surprising realities of getting more advanced in English, things people feel but maybe don't talk about.
Yeah, this text we're using, it was quite an eye-opener, actually. It goes beyond just tips and tricks and gets into the feeling of being at this stage.
So our goal here really is to shed some light on these things, give you that, okay, so it's not just me feeling.
And hopefully, spark a bit of renewed motivation. Because it's not about chasing some perfect, mythical native speaker accent, is it?
Not at all. It's about connection.
Yeah.
It's about really getting your message across.
So, where do we start? That native speaker ideal seems like a big one.
Definitely. Let's tackle that first, the whole idea of needing to sound exactly like a native speaker, that initial dream.
Oh, yeah. You imagine yourself just, like, effortlessly chatting, sounds like you were born speaking English.
Mm-hmm. But then reality hits. You still stumble sometime, or you forget a word, or you just feel a bit nervous.
And that can be really discouraging, can't it? You feel like you're failing somehow.
But here's a key thing the text points out, sort of a secret. Even native speakers aren't perfect.
Really.
Yeah. They make grammar mistakes, they forget words, they use fillers all the time, like it's normal speech.
Okay, that's actually quite freeing to think about. So, if perfect isn't the goal, what is?
Well, the text suggests shifting focus away from perfection towards connection and just effective communication.
Making sure people understand you and you understand them.
Exactly. Real fluency, it argues, is more about being able to tell your story, share your ideas, express your feelings without being totally frozen by fear.
I like that. The text has this great comparison, right? Someone with perfect grammar but they sound cold versus someone who makes tiny mistakes but sounds warm and open.
Precisely. Who would you rather talk to? It's about the feeling you create. Language is connection.
So people respect the effort, the honesty, wanting to connect more than perfect sentences.
That's what the source suggests, and I think it rings true. And there's this turning point it mentions,
Oh, yeah.
where learners kind of just let go of that pressure, that need to be perfect. They drop the burden.
And start seeing mistakes as just part of it, not failure.
Exactly. Accepting that mistakes happen, that it's okay, that's actually a huge step forward at this level. Communication, confidence, connection, those are the real aims.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, moving on from perfection, what about vocabulary? That's another area that gets tricky.
Oh, definitely. When you start out, learning new words feels great, right? Obvious progress.
Yeah, you learn cat, dog, house, go.
Yeah.
You feel like you're really getting somewhere. You build that foundation.
But then, at the advanced level, our source calls it a vocabulary explosion.
Explosion. Sounds intense.
It can feel like it. Suddenly you're hit with tons of new words, idioms you've never heard, phrasal verbs everywhere, slang, technical terms for work.
Whoa. Yeah, I can see how that would feel overwhelming. Like, will I ever know enough words?
And that's the key insight. You don't need to know every single word. Even native speakers don't. Think about professors. They still look up words sometimes.
Okay, so what's the strategy then?
Focus. Focus on the vocabulary that actually matters for your life. Your job, your hobbies, the things you talk about, the things you dream about.
The text uses that analogy.
Right.
Building a house.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need every boy in the world to build your house. Just the right ones for your specific project.
So it's about quality over sheer quantity. Words that you'll actually use.
Precisely. And it's less about memorizing lists at this stage and more about Absorbing words through real life,
How so?
through watching movies, having conversations, reading things you enjoy. It's gradual. It's about living with English, not just studying it.
Right, so that feeling of being swamped by words is normal. Just keep taking small steps, focus on what's relevant.
You got it. Consistency is key.
Okay, let's shift gears. Listening. That also changes quite a bit, doesn't it?
Massively. At the beginning, you often listen to things that are, well, quite clear, maybe slowed down a bit. Teachers speaking carefully.
Yeah, you get used to that, and you feel like, oh, okay, I'm getting good at listening.
And then you jump into a movie or try to follow a group of native speakers talking quickly.
It's like, whoa. Words just crash together, sentences seem unfinished, there's slang.
It feels messy. You might know the words individually, but processing them all that fast, it's tough.
Super frustrating. You feel like you should understand, but you just can't keep up.
But the text offers a cool perspective here. It calls this challenge a gift.
A gift? How?
Because it's pushing your brain. It's forcing you to think faster, to adapt to how English is really spoken, not just classroom English.
You mean with all the shortcuts like, words getting kind of squished together.
Exactly. The speed, the rhythm, the tone changes, the fillers, that's real life English. And yeah, initially it's like a puzzle with confusing pieces.
Okay. I like the puzzle analogy. So the pieces start fitting together eventually.
With exposure, yes, your brain starts recognizing the patterns, making connections, and then you hit those moments.
Like what?
Like suddenly realizing you understood a whole conversation, or you caught a joke without even thinking about translating. That feels amazing.
So the advice is, just keep listening.
Yeah.
Don't stop and analyze every word.
Pretty much. Try to get the main idea, the feeling, and definitely listen to real stuff. YouTube, podcasts, songs, actual conversations if you can.
Not just the lessons.
Right. Supplement the lessons. And repetition helps a ton. Listen again. Your brain catches more each time. It's a bridge to the next level, even if it feels hard right now.
Okay, that's encouraging for anyone struggling of listening. Now, what about actually speaking more naturally? That's related, but different.
Yeah, we focus so much on grammar and vocab for speaking well, and those matter, obviously.
But there's more to it.
Definitely. The text calls it the invisible struggle. It's the stuff that's harder to pin down, the rhythm, the tone, the speed, when to pause, how to use fillers naturally, the flow.
Ah, right. How native speakers connect words or reduce sounds, like wanna instead of want to.
Exactly. Or how they vary their pitch to show emotion, and those little is and ums, they're not mistakes, they're part of the rhythm.
And trying too hard to use perfect grammar all the time can actually sound
A bit stiff, unnatural. Yeah. Real natural speaking is about connecting, sounding human, following the music of the language.
So how do you learn that? It's not really in the textbooks.
It comes from experience. Deep listening, really paying attention to conversations, maybe even copying how people talk. Daily immersion helps.
And the text suggests letting go of that perfect grammar obsession a bit when you speak.
Yeah, prioritizing sounding natural over sounding perfect, using fillers when they feel right, linking words together smoothly.
It comes back to that idea of the two speakers again, doesn't it? The perfect but robotic one versus the slightly messy but lively one.
Exactly. You connect more with the lively one. So practice linking words. Don't be afraid of fillers.
And there's that technique, shadowing.
Right. Listen and immediately repeat what you hear. Focus on the sound, the tone, the rhythm, not just getting the words right.
And maybe just talking to yourself in English.
Absolutely. Describe your day, what you're doing. It helps you find that natural rhythm in your own voice. It's about finding that flow.
Okay, embracing the messiness for authenticity.
Yeah.
Now, speaking naturally is one thing, but what about the battle inside your head? Thinking in English.
Ah, the silent battle. That's a great way the text puts it. Because initially, we all translate, right? Think in our native language, translate, then speak.
Yeah, it's automatic at first.
But at an advanced level, that translation step really slows you down. You want to speak faster, more spontaneously, but your brain is still doing that extra work.
And it's tiring. You know the words, you know the grammar, but it feels like wading through treacle sometimes.
Exactly. And the text explains this really well. Thinking in English isn't just a skill, it's a whole new habit for your brain. It takes practice, patience, like carving a new path.
Like that river analogy it uses. Your thoughts flow naturally in your first language, and you need to gently redirect them to flow in English.
Precisely. And just learning more grammar or more vocab doesn't automatically make it happen.
So it's about conscious effort, daily habit.
Tiny habits. Start small. Just try thinking simple sentences in English. Okay, I need to make coffee. The weather looks nice today.
Naming objects around you.
Yeah. Or making little mental comments. It's about building that internal monologue in English.
And the text describes that moment when you realize you were thinking in English without trying, planning your day, feeling something.
And it feels like freedom, right? Like a switch has flipped.
So don't worry if your internal English thoughts are super simple at first.
Not at all. Keep it simple. And don't worry about mistakes in your head. It's just practice. Let it be broken English if it needs to be.
That suggestion of taking 5 minutes every morning to just think about the day ahead in English, that sounds doable.
It's a great starting point. Thinking in English is a big challenge. The text admits that. But it's also a huge victory when it starts happening. It makes everything else easier.
Right. But even when you're thinking and speaking more easily, does that fear of making mistakes ever fully go away? I think a lot of learners hope it will.
Yeah, that's a common hope. You get good, the fear vanishes.
But the text says, maybe not.
It says the truth is, even really fluent speakers often have some lingering fear of messing up. It just changes shape.
How so?
Well, beginners might freeze up completely. Advanced speakers might just feel a little knot in their stomach before a big presentation or double check something before saying it. The fear is still there, just quieter maybe.
But is that necessarily bad? The text had an interesting take on this.
Right. It suggests that feeling that fear isn't weakness. It actually shows you care. You care about communicating well, about connecting.
Like a performer getting butterflies before going on stage.
Exactly. It shows respect for what you're doing. And the key is acceptance. Accept the fear is there and speak anyway. Confidence isn't no fear. It's acting with the fear.
Like the singer analogy or the teacher feeling nervous. It's human.
And remembering native speakers make mistakes too. All the time. It's part of talking. Allowing yourself to be imperfect actually makes others feel more comfortable around you.
So it fosters connection again. Instead of seeing fear as an enemy, see it as a quiet companion.
Yeah, something like that. It doesn't have to stop you. Start small. Build courage.
Okay, now speaking of challenges, let's talk about plateaus. That feeling of being stuck.
Ugh, the dreaded plateau. Everyone hits them. You make quick progress at first. It feels great.
And then, bam, you hit a wall.
Yeah.
You're still studying, still practicing, but it feels like you're not getting any better.
It's so frustrating. And the text really highlights that this is normal, a standard part of growth, even if it doesn't feel like it.
It uses that tree analogy, right? Where growth is happening underground in the roots,
Yeah.
even if you don't see new leaves.
Exactly. Your brain is still consolidating things, making deeper connections. Even when progress isn't obvious on the surface, you're strengthening the foundations.
But so easy to get discouraged then, to think, maybe this is as far as I can go, or even quit.
Totally. But getting through that plateau, the text says, that shows real dedication. It means you're really in it.
And eventually things do click again. You start noticing improvement after feeling stuck.
Yeah, usually there's another breakthrough eventually. The key during the plateau is just to keep touching English every day.
Touching English, what does that mean?
Just small interactions.
Yeah.
Watch something short, read an article, listen to a song, say a few sentences, write a quick email. Just keep the connection alive.
And maybe try to remember why you started learning in the first place. Find the joy again.
Yes, and measure success differently. Not just how many new words, but do I feel a bit more comfortable? Am I less afraid? Am I enjoying using English more?
So if you're on a plateau now, hang in there. You're still growing, just quietly, preparing for the next jump.
Exactly. Patience and consistency.
Now, related to plateaus and feeling stuck, there's the realization that textbooks aren't everything.
Oh, absolutely. Textbooks are essential. They give you the structure, the foundation.
But the English people actually speak.
Hmm.
On the street, in movies, online. It's often quite different, isn't it?
Night and day sometimes. You realize there are so many words, expressions, ways of saying things that just aren't in the lessons. Life becomes the real teacher.
The textbook English is often so clean and slow and correct.
And real English is messy, fast, emotional, full of shortcuts, sometimes grammatically creative.
Yeah. It can be a bit shocking at first, maybe even confusing. You learn the rules, and people seem to be breaking them.
But the text frames it nicely. Textbooks give you the tools, the map. But the real journey, the adventure, happens when you step out into the real living world of English.
So there's a shift from just studying for a test to actually starting to live in English.
That's the goal. Using English to watch things you love, read about your interests, talk to people about real stuff. That's where true fluency is born.
Using English to live your life, basically. Connect with stories, emotions.
Yeah, maybe shift some time away from grammar drills towards just engaging with English content you genuinely find fun or interesting.
And accepting that it will be messy sometimes.
Yeah.
You'll misunderstand things, make mistakes.
Absolutely. Those mistakes you make outside the textbook, they're not failures. They're like little doorways to deeper understanding. Be brave, not perfect.
Okay, embracing the messiness of real-world English. Now, for the final point, which is quite profound, English becoming part of your identity.
Yeah, this is fascinating. The text talks about how English stops being just this external tool you use.
And it becomes internal, part of you.
Kind of like developing a second personality in English. You might find you express yourself slightly differently, think a bit differently, even feel things differently when you're operating in English.
Wow, so you meet this slightly new version of yourself.
It can feel like that, maybe a bit strange at first, but also kind of beautiful. Language and identity are so deeply linked.
So living in two languages means kind of living in two worlds, with different jokes maybe, or ways of seeing things.
Yeah, potentially. Different nuances, different cultural connections, and the text stresses it's not about losing your original self.
It's about expanding.
Exactly. Gaining new perspectives, adding layers. There's this powerful moment the text describes.
What's that?
When you say something in English, express a feeling or an idea, and you realize it wouldn't come out quite the same way in your first language, English gave you a unique way to articulate it.
That's amazing. So it unlocks new ways of thinking and feeling.
It can. And maybe you feel a bit shy about this changing sense of self, but the text says it's just a sign of incredible growth. Your heart and mind are making space.
So the advice is, just lean into it. Live in English as much as possible. Engage with emotions, stories, ideas in English.
Yeah, let that part of you grow. And remember, your first personality and your English personality can live side by side. They enrich each other.
Like having two gardens instead of one.
That's a lovely way to put it. You've built this second home inside yourself. It's a huge achievement. English is part of you now. You're not just learning, you're creating worlds within yourself.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. It changes the whole perspective on learning.
So the journey definitely continues. There will still be challenges.
But hopefully, keeping these hidden truths in mind helps. Keep going. Embrace the process. Notice the small shifts.
Absolutely. And maybe take a moment after this to think, which of these points really hit home for you? Which one felt like, yes, that's me?
Because of acknowledging these things is part of moving forward. You're doing great, you're strong, and you're often much closer than you think.
Keep going, keep exploring. You've got this.